Linda, you should get married. You can have any man in the world.
No, I couldn't have. You know, it always looks like there's a line at the front door, but really it's not. What is it? In the beginner's mind, there are many choices. In the Zen mind, there is only one. That's an old Zen koan.
Linda Ronstadt was never a symbol sculpted from trendy hits or flashy marketing campaigns. She was a product of silence, of delicate wounds, of a voice that rose from the deserts of Arizona to pierce through every boundary of race, genre, and gender. In the rock world of the 1970s, where men held the guitars and women stood in the shadows, Linda was the one who broke the order. Not through scandal, not through choreography, but through a singing power that made the whole world stop and listen. She didn't scream, didn't boast, didn't challenge anyone, yet she commanded the respect of Mick Jagger, Neil Young, and Don Henley. With a bare face and a voice like a velvet-wrapped blade, Linda stepped on stage and made every cover song entirely her own. She sang country, then rock, then opera, then Spanish-language boleros, not to prove anything, but because her heart refused to stay in one place. And that's why she never had a fixed spot, but always remained an indispensable part of American music history. Then one day, that voice disappeared. Not from an accident, not from age, but from a cruel disease called progressive supranuclear palsy, robbing her of control over her vocal cords, making it impossible to utter a single note. The voice that once made millions cry could now barely form a sentence. But Linda did not mourn aloud, did not beg for pity. She withdrew into the shadows with astonishing grace, as if music had never left her, only changed form. How could a Mexican-American woman who never married, never followed the beaten path, and could no longer sing, still become an icon honored by both the White House and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Join Rock Discovery as we trace that one-of-a-kind journey, from the early songs in a conflict-filled Tucson home, to the stage lights where she shattered every barrier, and finally to the silence, ringing like the immortal echo of a life that never bowed. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong anywhere, you might just understand why Linda Ronstadt gave voice to a generation that was left on the margins. Early life. Linda Ronstadt was born on July 15, 1946, in Tucson, Arizona, a sun-scorched land quietly rich in cultural identity. Her family was a strange fusion of two worlds. Her father, Gilbert Ronstadt, was a descendant of a long-established Mexican lineage, a man who loved singing boleros and could strum a guitar at any given moment. Her mother, Ruth Mary Copeman, was of German-American descent from Michigan, cold, strict, and so stoic that she forbade her children from expressing emotion. Linda's childhood unfolded in a large house filled with books, instruments, and silence. Her mother never hugged her children, never said, "I love you," never allowed for softness. Linda once wrote, "I grew up without knowing what it felt like to have someone stroke your hair before bed." Her father was gentler, but increasingly distant as his business demands grew and the marriage quietly fell apart. In that space, music was the one thing Linda didn't need permission for. While other girls played with dolls, little Ronstadt would sit alone by the record player, mouthing along to the voices of Edith Piaf, Maria Callas, and Hank Williams. She sang Mexican boleros her father had taught her, but only when her mother wasn't home, as she did not approve of that minority language in the household. That band didn't smother Linda's love for music. It only made it burn deeper, quieter, and more stubbornly within her. She was a sensitive child, often talking to trees, collecting half-finished poems, and feeling like an outsider in her own family. She didn't find warmth in arms, but she found it in chords. At just 10, Linda and her siblings formed a small singing group at home, but it soon dissolved as each went their own way. Linda was the only one who didn't quit, because she knew more than anyone else that music was the only place where she was truly allowed to be herself. By age 14, Linda began performing around Tucson. singing folk songs with a guitar borrowed from her brother. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She sang as if it were the only language she could trust, and somewhere deep within, she always knew. Her voice would carry her far from the house that never said the words, "I love you." Early career. At 18, Linda Ronstadt packed a few clothes, her guitar, and a heart tangled in contradictions, and left Tucson, crossing the desert to Los Angeles. She didn't carry dreams of fame or a clear plan, only the certainty that if she stayed in Arizona, she would suffocate. Los Angeles at the time was a haven for a new generation of artists: Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Jackson Browne, and an undercurrent of folk rock rising from the hills of Laurel Canyon. Linda didn't come to compete. She came to find a place where her voice could be heard. With two friends from high school, she formed the Stone Ponies, who quickly signed a record deal and rose to sudden fame with the 1967 hit "Different Drum," written by Michael Nesmith of the Monkees. Ironically, Linda initially disliked the song. She thought it was too sweet, too shallow. But when she sang it with her own brand of quiet loneliness, it became a phenomenon, a soft-spoken anthem for women who refused to be defined or restrained by love. After that success, the group dissolved. Record labels only wanted Linda. Her voice was all they remembered. The 1960s ended with the image of a young Linda Ronstadt. Long hair, bare face, singing alone among guitar-wielding men, unprotected, underestimated, and widely doubted to last. Critics claimed she was just a pretty face with light, forgettable ballads. One manager told her flat out, "You're not strong enough to go solo." But that doubt became her fuel. Linda began assembling her own backing band, featuring names that would later become legendary: Don Henley, Glenn Frey, Bernie Leadon, and Randy Meisner, the founding members of the Eagles. She didn't just discover them, she gave them a chance in a world that didn't yet believe women could lead in rock. Through the late 60s and early 70s, Linda persistently carved her identity. A solo artist singing country rock with unpolished sincerity and emotional weight. Her album Silk Purse, 1970, recorded in a barn in Nashville, marked her first turning point, even if it wasn't a commercial hit. But Linda didn't retreat. She kept touring, kept stretching her vocal range, and kept rejecting the polished studio sound that others tried to impose. The young woman from the Arizona desert didn't yet know what lay ahead. But in every song, in every slightly off-tempo line, she was drawing a map for a path no one else had taken, a path that would make her not just famous, but the first woman to walk alone into the world of electric guitars and masculine egos. From that moment on, Linda Ronstadt was no longer chasing opportunity, she was creating it. Career breakthrough. When Heart Like a Wheel was released in late 1974, Linda Ronstadt was no longer a mystery. She was one of the few female voices on the rock charts, a phenomenon critics could no longer ignore, even if not all of them were ready to accept her. But with You're No Good shooting to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and the album holding the top spot for weeks, Linda quietly broke down a door that had long been locked for women. Her career exploded. Hit after hit followed. When Will I Be Loved, It's So Easy, Blue Bayou, Desperado, most of them covers, but Linda sang as if she had written every word in blood and bone. These old songs were given new life, steeped in raw emotion and voiced by a woman unafraid to reveal pain, not sweetened, not softened. She didn't try to please anyone, she simply sang as herself. Throughout the 1970s, Linda became the best-selling female rock artist in America, without gimmicks, without revealing outfits, without scandal. Just a pair of denim shorts, cowboy boots, and a voice that could silence an entire stadium. She was the first woman to headline stadium tours as a solo act, something previously reserved only for male bands. But Linda didn't stand still. When the world wanted her to keep being the queen of country rock, she pivoted, recording classic jazz standards with a symphony orchestra, What's New, 1983, then starring in opera on Broadway, The Pirates of Penzance, followed by Mexican folk music in Canciones de mi Padre, 1987, sung entirely in Spanish. At first, her label advised against it, saying, "American audiences won't buy that kind of music." But Linda countered, "I'm not doing this to sell records. I'm doing it to reclaim the part of me that was denied." Strangely enough, Canciones de mi Padre not only succeeded, it became the best-selling Spanish-language album in U.S. history, won a Grammy, and for the first time gave Latino audiences the feeling of being represented by a mainstream artist. At the same time, she collaborated with legends like Dolly Parton and Emmylou Harris in the Trio albums, creating a powerful example of female solidarity in music. Linda never fought for the spotlight, never had to shout to be heard. But every artistic choice she made was a declaration that a female artist could sing anything, succeed in any genre, and still remain true to herself. Someone once asked Linda how she managed not to get lost in a male-dominated industry. She answered, "I don't need to shout to be heard, I just need to sing truthfully, so people can find themselves in it." And so, for over 2 decades, Linda Ronstadt wasn't just a singer. She was a voice no one could replace, no matter how many tried to dismiss her, doubt her, or assume women couldn't sing rock like men. Her career stands as proof of one truth. When you stop trying to be someone else, you become the only version of you there is. Crises and hidden wounds. Linda Ronstadt was never the kind of artist who courted scandal, but that didn't stop controversy from finding her. It was her very way of living, independent, outspoken, and unapologetically outside the mold, that made her a thorn in the side of a conservative media landscape. She didn't shout, but every choice she made was a quiet detonation, one that irritated some, yet could not be ignored. One of the biggest storms hit in 2004, at the height of a concert tour in Las Vegas. During a show at the Aladdin Casino, Linda dedicated the song Desperado to filmmaker Michael Moore, whose documentary Fahrenheit 9/11 had just sharply criticized President George W. Bush. What seemed like a small gesture sparked an instant uproar. The audience booed. Some threw bottles. The hotel asked her to leave immediately that night. Linda didn't apologize. She simply said, "If a singer isn't allowed to say what she believes in, then music is nothing more than empty entertainment." It wasn't the first time Linda clashed with the status quo. When she released Canciones de mi Padre, an album sung entirely in Spanish, many radio stations refused to play it, claiming it wasn't right for the American market. But Linda did it anyway, as a statement of identity. "I'm Mexican-American, and I won't let anyone erase that part of me." The result? The album not only won a Grammy, but became the best-selling Latin album in U.S. history. Because of her heritage, she also faced constant dismissals, accused of being just a studio product, with claims that no one could possibly sing rock, country, jazz, opera, and bolero all at once. Linda never argued. Instead, she won 11 Grammys across multiple genres, sang on Broadway, The Pirates of Penzance, and recorded full classical albums with symphony orchestras. Her personal life was also frequently scrutinized. The fact that she never married but became a single mother drew backlash, accused of being a threat to traditional family values. Rumors swirled about romances with celebrities, from Mick Jagger to Jim Carrey, blown out of proportion, leading Linda to once bitterly remark, "If I sit next to a man, they make him my husband." What bothered her most wasn't the gossip, but the quiet contempt that had followed her since childhood. The skepticism because she was a woman, because she was Mexican-American, because she refused to conform. Linda's entire career was a constant battle to be taken seriously, having to prove herself over and over through sheer talent alone. Yet what's strange is, she never showed anger. No takedowns, no tell-all memoirs, no media campaigns to clear her name. She did only one thing, kept living her way, and that perhaps was the most powerful statement of all. In a world where women are expected to be obedient, beautiful, married, and silent, Linda Ronstadt chose a different path. She didn't need to be loud to make waves, she just needed to exist without apology. Personal life. At the height of her fame, when the world hung on Linda Ronstadt's every career move, the press often preferred to ask, when will she get married? It was what society expected of a beautiful, successful, and wealthy woman. But Linda always smiled and shook her head. Marriage has never appealed to me. I love, but I don't need a piece of paper to prove it. There was no shortage of love in her life, but few of her romances were conventional. In the late 1970s, she dated Jerry Brown, then governor of California, later a U.S. presidential candidate, a free-spirited rock singer and a stoic politician, an unlikely pairing that lasted quietly for years. The media followed them like a fairy tale in progress. But to Linda, it was a love that lacked oxygen. I sing about feelings, he buries them, she once said. In the end, they drifted apart. No drama, no blame, just a song that ended softly. Then came director George Lucas, the father of Star Wars. The two even discussed marriage but never made it to the altar. Linda disliked constraints. She once joked, "Marriage to me feels like wearing a turtleneck 24/7, suffocating and itchy." There were rumors about romances with Mick Jagger, Steve Martin, even Jim Carrey, but most were exaggerated. Linda wasn't drawn to loud or flashy men. She was attracted to gentleness, intelligence, and people who respected her space. But such qualities were rare in show business. And she gradually realized that being alone might not be loneliness. It might be freedom. That freedom was most clearly expressed in her decision to become a mother. She adopted 2 children, Mary, a daughter, and Carlos, a son. No public discussion of the fathers, no marriage, no traditional family unit. To Linda, being a mother mattered more than being a wife. She lived quietly with her children in San Francisco, cooking, reading, teaching them to love art, and embrace their Mexican heritage, the very roots her own mother had once tried to erase. Still, Linda's private life wasn't entirely tranquil. Her independence unsettled many. She was labeled anti-traditional, eccentric, even dangerous, simply for showing that a woman could live fully without a husband. But Linda didn't care. She once said, "I've never seen anyone die from not being married, but I've seen plenty die slowly in the wrong one." In her 40s, as friends settled into domestic routines, Linda kept touring, then returned home to read to her children before bed. And in that quiet, she felt complete, not needing a wedding bouquet nor a spotlight, just a lullaby gently humming within her heart. Legacy and influence. If measured only by awards, Linda Ronstadt would already stand as a towering icon. 11 Grammy Awards, 3 American Music Awards, 2 Academy of Country Music Awards, and 1 Emmy. But numbers alone cannot capture the legacy she left behind. Because Linda wasn't just a singer. She was someone who expanded the boundaries of American music across genre, culture, and gender. Before Linda, no female artist had ever dominated both rock and country on equal footing with male performers. She didn't break through those barriers with rage, but with a weapon both soft and sharp, her voice. A voice tender enough to sing Blue Bayou, fierce enough to belt You're No Good, powerful enough to rise above a full symphony in classic jazz, and rooted enough to deliver boleros in Spanish like blood returning to the heart. She inspired a generation of female artists: Sheryl Crow, Katie Lang, Trisha Yearwood, Brandi Carlile. Many of them have said that it was Linda who first showed them that women didn't have to choose one genre, one mold, or one path to be successful. But perhaps Linda Ronstadt's deepest influence lay beyond the music charts, in how she claimed ownership of herself. She stood next to powerful men without deferring to them. She never apologized for singing in her father's language. She didn't bow to audiences when booed for her political beliefs. And above all, she never let the media define her life through love or marriage, something most of her female contemporaries could never quite escape. She was also a pioneer in reclaiming Latin identity within American music. Long before Latin music became a marketable trend, Linda had the courage to release an all-Spanish album at a time when record labels warned her not to. Canciones de mi Padre wasn't just a commercial success. It was a declaration of heritage, a reminder that you don't have to abandon your past to be accepted in the present. In 2014, Linda Ronstadt was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, an honor she couldn't accept in person due to her illness. But the women she had inspired, Bonnie Raitt, Emmylou Harris, and others, sang for her, spoke for her, and declared that without Linda, they wouldn't be standing on that stage. That same year, she received the National Medal of Arts from President Obama, who called her one of the most beautiful voices ever to grace America. But perhaps the most profound and honest tribute came from her daughter, Mary, who once said in a rare interview, "My mother didn't need applause, she needed truth, and she spent her whole life protecting it with music, with silence, and with unconditional love." Linda Ronstadt's legacy doesn't lie in record sales. It lies in the fact that she sang what women didn't dare to say, lived the life society told her she shouldn't, and knew exactly when to be silent, so that her voice could echo longer than any spoken word. Present day. Since 2013, Linda Ronstadt has no longer sung, not because of age or retirement, but because of a rare neurological illness called progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, a disorder that has robbed her of control over her facial muscles, eyes, and vocal cords. The voice that once hushed the world can no longer carry a single note. "I can't hold a note, can't go high or low. It all disappeared overnight," she shared, calm, but never pitiful. Yet Linda hasn't let that silence be the end of her story. She retreated to a small house in San Francisco, where she lives with her 2 children, Mary and Carlos, and continues to be present in a different way, writing her memoir, Simple Dreams, appearing in documentaries, giving interviews, and quietly inspiring others as a living testament to an artistic life that never bowed. In 2024, the city of San Francisco declared Linda Ronstadt Day on her 78th birthday, a moving tribute to the woman who has called the city home for over 3 decades. That same year, Hollywood announced a biopic about her life, with Selena Gomez set to star and the team behind The Sound of My Voice producing. A film not just about a voice, but about a woman who always dared to live on her own terms, even when the cost was loneliness. In 2025, at the CMA Theater in Nashville, a tribute concert was held in her honor, gathering stars like Emmylou Harris, Trisha Yearwood, Rodney Crowell, Patti Scialfa, and James Taylor. Linda could no longer sing, but she was present, in every lyric, in the gratitude of her peers, and in the quiet dignity behind the scenes. At the same time, a new wave called the Linda Ronstadt Experience, fronted by young singer Tristan McIntosh, toured across the U.S., bringing her music to a new generation. Linda no longer needs to stand on stage, because her music has taken on a life of its own, echoing and spreading like the memory of an era she once lit ablaze. Someone once asked her, "If you can't sing anymore, who are you?" Linda simply smiled and replied, "I'm still me." Singing was just one part, but what made me an artist was how I loved the world, and no one can take that away. In a world where noise often drowns out emotion, Linda Ronstadt chose silence, but never vanished. Because some voices don't need to rise anymore to move hearts, they live on in memory, in legacy, and in the way they once dared to live. Linda Ronstadt never chased the spotlight. She chased the truth. No image crafting, no market pandering, no pretending when in pain, and no faking when happy. For over 4 decades at the heart of American music, she embodied a quiet kind of honesty, a borderless voice, a spirit beyond labels, and a woman who lived fully without needing anyone's permission. She never defined herself by one genre because she stood at the crossroads of many: rock, country, bolero, jazz, opera. She never needed a man to complete her because she was already whole. And even now, when she can no longer sing, Linda Ronstadt still makes the world stop and listen. In a different way, through intellect, memory, and the quiet courage of an artist who once sang with her entire soul. Today, with her name etched into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, with millions still singing along to Blue Bayou, and with new generations discovering her voice like a gentle refuge, Linda doesn't need to say goodbye. Because people like her never really leave, they just choose to sing in a softer key. If you've ever felt like you didn't fit the mold, ever fought to preserve your identity in a world that insists you change, then maybe you've already heard Linda Ronstadt. Not through any specific song, but through the way she lived, unapologetic, uncompromising, and never losing herself. And if Linda Ronstadt's story touched you, through her voice, her silence, or simply her choice to be fully herself, leave a comment below. Which of her songs do you love most? Share it so her voice can keep echoing, through memory, through hearts, and through the community we're building here together. Hit subscribe so you won't miss the next emotional journey with Rock Discovery. See you next time.